Hello everyone, it's Raleigh and welcome to the final intro video in this series. First off, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the series, make sure to leave a comment and let me know. If the reception is good and demand is there, I will certainly consider making other regions like the Heart of Maguma and the Far Shiver Peaks in the future. Now to what we're talking about today. Or rather, the Ruins of Or. Or is a special place in Guild Wars in a lot of different ways. For veteran players that played the first game, Or was always this interesting place that was connected to a lot of things in lore, but we were never able to go there. By the time the player was able to venture out into the world, meaning after the initial tutorial area of Guild Wars 1, Or had already sunk to the bottom of the ocean. So when Guild Wars 2 was announced and we were told that we would be able to go to Or, I think many players were ecstatic at this prospect. The main issue was that obviously this land wasn't what it once was, since it had been under the ocean for over 200 years and was now controlled by the undead elder dragon Zhaitan, meaning that we have yet to see Or in its prime during the time when the gods resided there. Nonetheless, it still plays a major role in terms of world building and lore for the Guild Wars universe. In order to not spoil too much of the story, I will not be talking about the actual current events that happen on the maps. Or is a place that's meant to be played through for one to truly understand all that happens, and it was for the core game, the end game area of the world. With all that said, it's still imperative that we talk about some of the major events in history, and as with both the Kryda and Ascalon video, it will be mostly human-centric. Let me also mention that some of the lore about the arrival of humans and the years after are a little contradicting at times, so I will be doing my best to stitch a lot of the info together coherently. As always, beware of general spoilers, especially for the novels and the first game, but let's have a look at what the region of Or entails. The Ruins of Or are located on a peninsula on the southern edge of central Tyria, within the Sea of Sorrows. The only land access to Or is the Scavenger's Causeway. We don't get to see Or in its glory before the Cataclysm, but we do see it after it was pulled from the ocean depths. Having been underwater for many years, Or is now covered in coral, and due to the corruption of the undead elder dragon Zhaitan, no vegetation can bloom. Or is a dark and gloomy place, and since it's Zhaitan's territory, it is overrun by risen undead. The only thing besides Risen, one can also find many ruins throughout the entire region, a testament to the grand human nation that Or once was. Since this was the nation the human gods resided in, there are not only many statues and mentions of the gods, but also giant cathedrals built in their honor located all around the different maps. Ara, the capital of Or, lies in the center of the peninsula. While massive, it is the lair of the undead elder dragon, with its most ruthless minions patrolling both the ground and the air as well. Or is the ultimate goal for the core game. Your adventures will lead you here, and this is where things will become more and more unforgiving, since friendly units are far and few between. Or's history is vast, and as I mentioned earlier, I would like to refrain myself from spoiling too much, but let's have a look at an outline of the timeline of the nation of Or. Many years before the human gods stepped foot onto Tyria, in 1680 BE, the Forgotten, one of the elder races, had built a ritual site at a place that would eventually become Ara many years later. At this ritual site, they cast a spell on Glost, a champion and scion of Kralkatorrik, the elder dragon of Crystal and Fury, to give her free will. After having been freed, she took on the name Glint and aided the elder races in their struggle against the elder dragons by concealing them until the elder dragons gradually fell back into slumber. In 205 BE, humans arrived on Or and created a human system of governance and an empire that spanned many regions on the continent of Tyria. The human gods traveled Tyria in search of powerful artifacts, such as the Seer's Bloodstone and the Mystic Telescope of the Jotun, which they brought back to Ara for study and safekeeping. While on Tyria, the gods resided in Ara among their followers. However, their godly radiance blinded mortals who gazed upon them for too long, so eventually the gods decided to retreat from public. Dwayna, the goddess of life, commissioned the Orion sculptor Malcor to make a statue of each god. As the statues were completed, the respective gods depicted in the statues retreated into Ara one by one. Around 100 BE, as the humans settled Ascalon, driving the Char north, Doric was crowned the first king of Tyrian human lands in Ascalon. Around 48 BE, the old and tyrannical god of death, Doom, was overthrown by Dwayna's half-god's son, Grenth, with the help of 7 mortals. After Doom's defeat, Grenth absorbed his power and ascended to godhood, becoming the new god of death and taking his place among the pantheon of the human gods. The 7 mortals who were with him were rewarded by being elevated into the gods' immortal avatars. They became known as the 7 Reapers. Doom, however, was still alive, so Grenth imprisoned him within the Hall of Judgment in the underworld. In 1 BE, Abaddon, the god of water and secrets, gifted magic to the mortal races. This, however, created discord among these races, as they became greedy, which led to the emergence of devastating wars. King Doric, soured by these events, traveled to Ara to plead with the gods to take back magic. The gods answered his plea and transferred all magic into the Bloodstone, which they then sealed with Doric's blood and sundered it into 5 pieces at an altar in Ara. Thereafter, they took the pieces of the Bloodstone and cast them into Abaddon's mouth, a volcano on the Ring of Fire, to prevent anyone from ever wielding power over all magic again. Abaddon disagreed with his fellow gods' decision to revoke the gift of magic, leading to an eventual war between his Marganite army and the other gods' followers, in which Abaddon lost and was imprisoned alongside his army in the Realm of Torment in 0 AE. After this event, the human gods tried to erase any knowledge of Abaddon so that he couldn't tempt any mortals. To this end, they sank his temple beneath the waves and sealed many of his texts. In the same year, the human gods decided to leave Tyria in an event known as the Exodus of the Gods. The Orion people took on the protection of the holy city of Ara as their sacred charge in hopes that the gods would return one day. The Orion nation lasted until the end of the Third Guild War around 1070 AE. At this point, Or had sent many of its forces to quell the violence of the Guild Wars on the mainland of the continent. The Char, taking advantage of the infighting of the human nations, invaded all 3 nations at the same time. In 1071 AE, with Or lacking defensive forces due to many soldiers still being abroad, the Char had pushed very far into Orion territory, threatening the kingdom's very existence. King Reza's advisor, Vizier Kilbron, in a desperate attempt to protect the nation, read from one of the lost scrolls of the god Abaddon, unleashing a torrent of dark magic that defeated the Char, but also resulted in the entire nation sinking to the bottom of the ocean. This event became known as the Cataclysm. In the recent years following the Cataclysm, corsairs ventured to the remaining shores of the nation to pillage whatever treasure they could find. In 1219 AE, Zaitan awoke underneath the sunken Or, raising it from the water and causing the Great Tsunami, devastating many shores around the Sea of Sorrows. In the following decades, Zaitan had sent many of its minions to assault the surrounding regions by both land and sea, including the assault during the Great Crichton Blockade in 1256 AE. That brings us to the current state of the ruins of Or. Being overrun by risen undead, exploration of Or is at a minimum. Zaitan keeps sending its forces outward, while he himself stays far within the ruins of the city of Ara. The shores of Or are protected by many of the risen dead ships, and intel on what is happening within the borders of the nation are scarce at best. Many people, including the Orders of Tyria, are actively acting against the risen forces on many different fronts, with some people wanting to simply kill the dragon, while others want to cleanse the land of the corruption of the Elder Dragon. Without spoiling what exactly is going on in the maps during the actual game, let's have a look at the region and see what you might find out there. We start at the eastern edge of Or. The first map are the Straits of Devastation, which is again a more transitional map. In this map, you're not only introduced to Or, but also how simply massive Zaitan's army truly is. We start at the eastern side of the map, where the areas of Mount Maelstrom to the east blend together with parts of Sparkfly Fen from the north. In the center here is a large fort that's overlooking the bay leading up to Ore, as well as the southern bridges connecting the landmasses. The middle part of the map is the aforementioned bay. The western side is the first part of Ore, with the Cathedral of Glorious Victory, the cathedral dedicated to the human god Balthazar, at the top of a big hill. The Vizier's Tower, the place where Kilbron enacted the Cataclysm, sits on an island between the bridges connecting the two landmasses. Going further west, we enter Malkor's Leap. This map stretches on the northern side of Ore along the water. The two main attractions in this area are the Cathedral of Eternal Radiance, dedicated to the human goddess Lissa, and the Cathedral of Zephyrs, dedicated to the human goddess Dwayna. On the east side lies Kita Manse, a large manor that once belonged to a powerful Orion Mesmer. At the foot of the structure that holds the Cathedral of Eternal Radiance is the village of Ren, where the goddess Lissa resided at some point in time. Shortly north of the village is Doom's Last Stand, the location where Grenth usurped the old god of death. For the last map, you will find the Cursed Shore. This is the first map that has entirely level 80 enemies on it. It stretches north to south along the west side of Ore. About halfway through, you come across the Cathedral of Verdance, which is dedicated to the human goddess Melandru, and close by is Winternell Isle that has a mysterious labyrinth on it. A little further south sits an old shipyard, and on the most southern tip of the map on one of the larger islands is the Cathedral of Silence, which is dedicated to the human god of death, Grenth. On the east side of the map is the Promenade of the Gods, which leads into the capital city of Ara, the location where Zaitan sits in waiting together with his strongest champions. This is about all I will mention on things to find in Ore. Like I said, I feel like the point of the main game all leads to the eventual attack on Ore. To that end, I didn't want to spoil the ending in any shape or form. Ore has a lot of interesting secrets and many haven't been solved even to this day, so make sure to pay attention to any interesting details as they might become more relevant at some point in time. With this, dear player, we are at the end of the introduction to the regional lore of Central Tyria. There's still a lot to learn and see. If you're interested in seeing more lore related stuff, make sure to like and subscribe, and perhaps check out some of my other videos on the channel, like the history of the human gods, for example. As I said before, if you like this series, make sure to let me know, and maybe I will work on some other regions in the future. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later. Bye guys!